Tierney. He is here at our request to discuss FEMA flood maps and flood insurance. Congressman, if you could join us. Just a little bit about Congressman Tierney. He's in his 9th term representing the 6th Congressional District here in Massachusetts. He's recently been named the ranking member for the Subcommittee on Health, Employment, Labor, and Pensions for the current Congress, which are all very, very important issues for a lot of folks in the city of Lynn. There have been recent action at the federal level regarding FEMA maps, regarding flood insurance that had an impact on coastal communities in Massachusetts, and in particular, the city of Lynn. We were gracious and happy enough to host one of the 2 public hearings in the 6th Congressional District here in the city of Lynn. We have yet to approve the maps, much to the behest of our friends in ISD, but I promised that we would do our due diligence, and we are honored to have Congressman Tierney here today to discuss his efforts and some suggestions for the city of Lynn going forward. Congressman Tierney, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, President Cahill, members of the council, Madam Clerk. First of all, thank you for inviting me to come and join you this evening. I appreciate that. And I hope we can add a little bit of clarity to some of the things that have gone on with respect to flood insurance and then the maps as well. There was a tremendous amount of misunderstanding, much of which has occurred because of the way that things were implemented. There were 2 things going on, really. One was that Congress passed a bill because FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, who runs the flood insurance program, had a serious deficit on that, about $24 billion after some major storms, Sandy being the most recent one. Katrina, Sandy, the build-up on that. By the time they played up all the claims, they had a substantial debt on that, and so there was a great movement out there to figure out how we're going to adjust the premiums for a flood insurance program, because that's where the money came from the pool of money that was used to pay off claims. And how do they go about doing that? Plus, other people were complaining that people in flood zones were being subsidized by taxpayers generally, so that their insurance premiums were down. So Congress passed a bill. It was a bipartisan bill, the Water Spigot bill, and basically asked FEMA to do a study of the General Accountability Office or National Science Foundation to do a study on what we might do in terms of realigning the risk so that the homeowners will pick up a reasonable portion of the risk as opposed to the taxpayers, and how they would then phase in the implementation of new rates that were there. Who would they grandfather and not affect at all? Who would be brought in? How quickly would they be brought into the adjusted rates? And so on. Unfortunately, FEMA then took it upon themselves to go out and not do the study. And they just went out and all of a sudden people got notices that their premiums had gone up in many cases substantially. And that raised the first concern. Separate from all of that, FEMA then had taken it upon themselves to do some new maps. There was nothing to do with the law that was passed on that. They just thought that this was an appropriate time to do maps, and they went out and remapped a number of areas, including Massachusetts, and a lot of new people found themselves included in flood zones that had never been before. And so they got 2 double whammy. They were in the zone they hadn't been before, and the premiums were being adjusted on that basis. This is one thing that we have bipartisan agreement on. People across the country were affected, and we managed to start putting some legislation together to delay the implementation of the law so that the study could be done and we could determine where we were going. We didn't get it totally delayed for 5 years, but we backed it off substantially, and people now are going to have some time to have this implemented on that, and there are going to be some caps as to just how much the premiums can go up in any year until they reach the final point. And people that were already in property that had been in a flood zone since the very beginning when the maps were done, whatever rate they were at that point, that's going to be their rate to be grandfathered in. Other people that get into a new rate after the study is done will have a cap. They can't go more than 15% on any given year, so that will be phased in more slowly. And we've asked FEMA also to make sure that they try to keep it so that no particular homeowner has a premium that will be more than 1% of the mortgage on the house. So we've tried to put in as much as we could on that. It's very confusing for people. We've also determined that we don't think FEMA used the right methodology on mapping in many instances. And so we've been working with people that want to appeal the maps that apply to their neighborhood or their community or even their city or town, try to get some information available to people so that they can make the challenges, because you do have to appeal on a case-by-case basis. We found in Rockville, for instance, based their appeal on the methodology used because FEMA had used the wave situation of the West Coast. Our situation is much different here. Most of our storms are Eagles. This was a whole different wave pattern, and that would affect the mapping, of course. So we have done a number of things. We've had 2 meetings in the district that we publicized as widely as we could. One here in Lynn with FEMA down here to answer the questions of individuals and communities, and one up in Newbury, so people who can do it. And we had people from Lynn in both of those meetings as well. And then we brought down an expert that had been working for FEMA years ago, but now I was a consultant, was an expert, and we had a meeting in Ipswich. Again, Lynn had a representative there and others, trying to get people through the process of what to do if they had a question, either as a community or as an individual. And we continue to work on trying to make sure that FEMA does the maps in the correct way, and that people know if they want to appeal, and we continue to press for a little more relief on the statutory side of it as well. But I want to just thank you for allowing me the opportunity to come in and mention all of this, because I hope that people are either reading the minutes or watching this in some way. They know they can go on our website, they can call the office, they can get in touch with FEMA directly, and I'm sure they'll be coming to you at some point in time asking for assistance as well. And I invite all of you to, feel free to call the office, and we can make sure that we get people to you to talk to if you want to appeal either on a city basis or neighborhood basis, or even help some individuals on that. Mr. President, if anybody has a question?
Thank you, Congressman. Thank you for the explanation as well. I would open it up to the council for any questions. Councilor Byer.
What can the city do to challenge those maps?
If you have, you'll need your own maps, and you need to be able to go back and determine the date of your original maps, and then you work through with your people to determine whether or not FEMA used the proper map. When they went out and they have a question on the methodology, you'll be able to challenge it on that basis. So you'll have your engineers who'll be involved in that, and then you'll have take off from that point.
Any further questions? Council Taylor.
I know you're talking about what could be grandfathered, but one of the problems, and we promised to work with this, is that that's fine for the people that are living there when they say they're grandfathered and the old terms, but the problem is that people are starting to sell their houses, homes in these areas, which one of them is my water, the value of their properties is going down because of this. These people are afraid that once they buy the property, the premium might be paid now, but when they get it, it's going to go up. Is there anything Congressman to help with that?
Well, right now, we're in this period trying to get FEMA to do the maps, do the study, so we can determine on that. The seller will have the same position as the buyer on that. But the bill is legal model of uncertainty going forward on that. So we're trying to, we only gave 18 months to do the study and come back out with a plan of whether they're going to grandfather or who they weren't, and what the increases are going to be and how they're going to phase it in a way to try to keep premium increases so that they're not more than 1% of the mortgage value, and they don't go up more than 15% on any given year. So we're trying to expedite it as quickly as possible, get to a point of certainty so people won't fall into that situation. But at least they know that it won't go up more than 15% a year on that, but the absolute rate will still be set, we can get them to correct some of the assessments that they make.
So that when the new buyers come in, they buy the property, it's going to be 15% less.
If their premiums are going to go up, if they find it on that, then it will go up no more than 15% a year on that until they get to the final point of where their premiums are, so it won't come all at once.
Any other questions? Councilor Lozey.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Congressman Tierney, for your efforts in Congress in bringing this relief. As you well know, it kind of was sprung on the American public. And Ward 1, by the way, has sluice and flats pond, as you probably know, and a lot of people have been adversely impacted by these changes, and there's just so many that were raised, as Councilor Sear pointed out. I think a new owner is not protected, and correct me if I'm wrong, when they come into the property, they're subject beyond that 15% increase that the previous owner may have enjoyed.
Well, right now, what we're doing, the new owner is going to take the same position as the buyer on that, but they are going to have to be affected.
They are protected in that.
Well, at the moment, all right, but they're also, if it's a change in the value of the property, if there's a change in the map or something like that, they could be affected. And then they're going to have to, that study is going to come into play as to how much they're going to affect in a given year and you want to be cautious of that.
Yes, and you mentioned earlier, Congressman Tierney, about the changes in the mapping that FEMA had undertaken, and the firm maps have changed as much as 2.5 feet in some locations, and they've actually broadened to much greater inclusive areas, which, you know, it is debatable. And I think earlier you mentioned, and I was unclear, these people would have to hire a surveyor or an engineer in order to get FEMA to revise these. And
If you're dealing with a lot by lot, then the owner could have to do that, and sometimes it's expensive, so it's $700, $800. It could be less, but sometimes it can go up that expensive. But some municipalities can also be, because sometimes it's an entire municipality that's involved in that, sometimes a neighborhood, and that's so that people can try to work out that situation, sometimes get together with others who basically have a plot plan that covers the whole area or a whole street or, you know, a neighborhood on that basis. But your city maps can be a good place to start, to see whether or not FEMA was working off the right maps to begin with, or whether they were, you know, working on a false set of maps on that. We found that to be the case in some places around the country where they didn't have the right starting point, and that allows for a challenge. The methodology, as I said, sometimes is not appropriate on that. But you know, you have to check and see whether or not you believe you have a case sometimes to get out of that map situation because they have made some inappropriate views of what's going on. The mapping that they did, a lot of it was aerial, and so sometimes you might be able to bring in evidence of the topography or other things that would change that view. So it's very much, you know, something that you may have to feel on your own. You may have to, you know, really do some of your neighbors all with you.
yeah, Congressman Tierney, it's difficult because the process is actually a letter of a map revision that requires these people to hire an engineer or a surveyor. So it's kind of crummy how FEMA, you know, did change it dramatically in many locations as they did. And I think, you know, more time needs to be taken. And
we have a bill filed right now that delayed 3 to 5 years on that, and that's because we agree with you. It was crummy on really crummy like that. It was not what was intended. It was not what the statute said. The statute was pretty clear. They would do the study done, and then they would come back to us with a way of how they're going to phase it in, who they're going to grandfather, and the whole implementation process. So we want to get back to that point and push them. So we got a pathway here, and the bill we passed more recently backed that off somewhat. We're still pressing on to do a little bit more on that. The other, you know, part of it is there are things that homeowners can do to substantially reduce their premiums. And if they went to some of the meetings that we had around the district on that, we have quite a bit of advice from people as to ways that they can, you know, lower their premiums. They may fill their basement, they can go up on stilts, and take other actions on that, move their electrical and other things out of the basement. Different ways that they can go on that. And communities can also make sure they do things that will lower the premiums anywhere from 10% to 40-45% on that. So those are things that the community can look into, and the state, and then we're able to try and make sure that they qualify for those kinds of adjustments.
thank you for your efforts on this, Congressman.
Council Ford.
Yes, thank you for coming, Congressman Tierney. One of my districts I represent abuts the Saugus River, Boston Street, Summer Street. I had numerous calls. I agree with Councilor Lozey. A lot of my constituents, I think, would be into neighborhood meeting style. There's so many affected that live in that area in Summer and Boston. And 3 to 5 years, just a number of things you said tonight. I appreciate you coming because it gives me a reply to the many calls I received.
Well, if the council feels at some point in time it would be useful to have FEMA come back, you know, they've been here twice and they're not always going to get down there, we can certainly try to get them back again if people didn't get to either one of those meetings or I'm getting satisfaction calling them directly. And even if they want to speak to a person who's an expert, so to speak, whatever, we don't necessarily endorse the expert or anything like that, but we can make at least one that we know of available and we can recommend others on that basis who work for FEMA, know how the process works, can advise them on ways to try to get some discounts, also ways to qualify on challenging the map and things of that nature.
That's great. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Council Calucci.
I'd like to make a motion. Can we get the law department to challenge the maps that FEMA challenge the FEMA maps? Can we, on the motion?
Motion has been made for the law department to look into challenging the
FEMA maps.
FEMA maps. I'll take that for a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Council Barton?
Yes.
Yes. Council Cahill?
Yes.
Yes. Council Capano?
Yes.
Yes. Council Jacutis? Yes. Yes. Council Calucci?
Yes.
Yes. Council Creighton?
Yes.
Yes. Council Seer?
Yes.
Yes. Council Ford?
Yes.
Yes. Council Lozey?
Yes.
Yes. Council Net?
Yes.
Yes. Council Trahan? Yes.
Motion carries. Council Capano.
Yes, I'd also like to thank Congressman Tierney for his efforts with the flood maps. And I also have a significant part of the ward that is affected by it. And it's like almost anybody. And by the river there's a puddle. I had a puddle in the front of their house. Houses and they have the insurance rates go up. But the efforts put in by you will help a lot. I just wanted to say, if we could formally request that FEMA do come back because of the new legislation, it'd probably be good for them so people could know, the changes that were made, because we had a pretty good turnout when they came here to City Hall, I believe. So I think a follow-up, like I said, with the new legislation in passed, I think it would be really helpful.
We'd be happy to put the question to them, again, to see if they come back and coordinate it so that it's at a convenient time for folks. And we'll also be happy to work with the legal department so that they know where to intersect with FEMA and get started on that project.
If I may, Congressman, we may have to have you back because as we've all been receiving texts, apparently the sound is not operable at Lynn came right now. So many people in the city are watching. If you do sign language, I think it would have been a better discussion because of the folks who couldn't hear us. However, they will be fixing, and of course, there's always LynnHappens.com that has this with audio, and they will be fixing it for their broadcasts tomorrow at 2 o'clock and 8 o'clock. So we apologize that folks are texting. They want to hear what you have to say, and they will tomorrow.
I just get away with this all the time.
So we
Thank you for the invitation.
thank you very much, Congressman. We appreciate you. You're always as well. Any other questions for the Congressman? Thank you again, Congressman.